Welcome everyone back to Beat the Game. This is Steve, and it's time to talk about another aspect strategy theme. All right, so the next one we're going to talk about is kind of like aggressive justice, which I affectionately like to call vigilante justice strategy. What is that? Well, vigilante justice. When I was looking at the cards like followed and cards like that with the Daredevil and all these cool images, I was like, oh man, it'd be cool to see if we can make a theme where we're using the justice aspect to deal the damage rather than our hero cards to deal the damage. So kind of like the reverse, the polar opposite of what we did with permanent justice. Vigilante justice really focuses on our hero removing the threat and the justice aspect dealing the damage, which again, like it's really more of a thematic build than an actual like, oh, this is super efficient. Solo play, it can be done. Like there's a lot of ways to be creative in solo play. Even in 2-player games, I could see this strategy working. Beyond that, I think it's going to be a little rough. I don't think this is a very efficient multiplayer strategy, just because the threat levels are so much higher and everything comes up a lot faster here. So a lot of the combo pieces that we want to be able to trigger off and pull off aren't going to be as accessible. So for vigilante justice, 1 player, 2 players, I think you have a good shot there of making the strategy work really, really well. So what's the upside of this? Well, the upside of this is it's a new way to look at building a justice deck. You know, if you're getting stagnant and you're like, oh, seems like I'm always using the same things in justice, and I feel like it's kind of weird. And like, I want to try something new. And this is exactly what it is. It's just trying something new, something thematic, rather than something, efficient. So again, whichever type of deck builder you are, you'll either love this or you'll see like, this is just stupid, Steve. What are you doing? So again, and you feel free to tell me what you think about this strategy in the comments. Yeah, there you go. So, all right. So how do I play this strategy? What does it entail? What does my hero have to do or have or being to be efficient in this type of strategy? Well, control here is very, very important. So you want to have access to ways to confuse the villain a lot, because some of the payoffs will actually be happening when the villain is confused, and that's how we're going to find some of our best damage. You also want to try to keep the threat always at 0. So that's another way that you have to keep control of this. So that is how to play this. So keeping the main scheme at 0 and making sure that you can remove all the threat every time with your hero action. All right, like your hero's basic ability. And then you get the payoffs from everything else in the justice aspect. What's the downside of playing this? Well, the downside, very, very easy. If you're playing, the downside is mostly going to be in multiplayer games. In multiplayer games, you won't be able to remove threat enough. You won't be able to control the board enough to make this strategy efficient. So if you're playing in a 3-player game or 4-player game, please don't try this. It's definitely not the most optimal way to play. But again, that being said, if 4 players are playing justice and you all want to run this strategy, then it can happen. Then you can make this happen again. And but again, it's all about being thematic enough. So let's take a look at some of the best heroes for this type of strategy. So let's take a look. See. All right, this is let's talk about my favorite heroes to play this strategy. I think the first one that comes to mind for me is Gamora. Now, the reason why is Gamora my favorite one? Well, a lot of the events that we're going to be playing in Justice are going to be attack events, and because of her finesse ability, plus her 2 thwart, plus if I give her heroic intuition, she can remove 3 threat. She'll be able to remove threat on like every time, like not every time I play an attack event, but on attack events. So that's super, super efficient. And it, again, for that solo play strategy, I think Gamora is going to be super, super, super fun and very efficient for this. And again, we'll see the cards and you'll see why. The next one for the strategy that is just broken, Spectrum. Spectrum, again, every time she changes forms, she deals damage, removes threat. She has all these things that she can do every time she flips form, and she has a lot of cards that make her do that in her kit. So again, super efficient in this strategy. And plus, when she goes into photon form, well, she has a thwart of 3 basic, so that can go up to 4, and that's amazing. Like in the solo play, you're removing pretty much all the threat from the main scheme every time you're doing something. So that these, I think, the top 2 characters that I really like. Aside from that, and yes, the first time he's making one of my lists, Doctor Strange. All right. Doctor Strange, again, he's definitely not one of my favorite heroes. He is extremely powerful because he can be super control-y. Doctor Strange, he's got the ways to ready as well in his kit. So again, super efficient hero. Again, and he can kind of play. And what I like about Doctor Strange right now is I like to play him to have fun and not just to dominate the game. So I kind of either play without his invocation deck and other things like that there to try to make him a little bit more on the same level as everyone else. But yeah, Doctor Strange, because of that invocation deck, just makes him just one step ahead of everyone else in this game. The other ones I really like Star-Lord as well for this strategy. Again, Star-Lord, once he has that helmet on, and he not the helmet, but the leader of the Guardians, every ally gets +1 thwart, including every Guardian, so including himself. So again, he's another character that can get up to 4 threat removal from his base, just some of his basic hero action, which I think is just incredibly satisfying for this type of strategy. And then Captain America, and again, just Captain America, he can just ready, defend. So he's kind of like in all places at once, and he can do pretty much everything. So I really, really like these heroes. Not to say that there's not other heroes that are very, very good in this list. Rocket Raccoon, Iron Man, Venom, and Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Black Widow, Nebula, Scarlet Witch, Ant-Man, Wasp, Quicksilver, Vision. And then one who's kind of unorthodox in this, because most of them I like to have a 2 thwart. But I love Ms. Marvel in this strategy just because the events that you're going to be using that deal damage can get amplified and biggened. So it can just be 0 for 5 damage or like 1 for 6. I think I love the way she plays. So Ms. Marvel, again, she didn't make the top because, again, I have to use events to make her efficient and instead of just using her base power. So that's why I think for characters like the 2 thwarts up there are some of the better characters to play this. Now, the ones that didn't make the cut, obviously, there's a bunch that didn't make the cut. It's mostly the heroes that have 1 threat or 0 threat, like She-Hulk, Drax, Adam Warlocks. Spider-Woman, she can actually make the cut. She should be in the other pile. It's just weird because she has to be in 2 aspects at once. So for these like thematic aspect things, it's kind of weird to keep her on there. But yeah, it can still work with putting him a lot of like the non-thwarty events and just kind of boosting her stats so she can do. So you can go leadership, justice, and play like cards like Moxie and stuff like that. You can kind of boost her abilities at the same time. All right, so now let's take a look at some of the best cards that make this strategy come to life. All right, let's take a sec. All right, so my favorite card for this strategy is Pivotal Moment. All right, so Pivotal Moment, it says deal 2 damage to the villain, 5 damage if there's no threat on the main scheme. So again, for doing your job, you get rewarded. So this is basically a better uppercut as long as there's no threat on the main scheme. Now, what's good about it, in the early campaigns, most of the threats started at 0. And then again, now there's all these, now Guardians of Galaxy threats started at 1 away from popping. So obviously in the Guardian set, this strategy is a little bit harder to play out. But this card is normally 2 for 5 damage Injustice on turn 1, which is pretty efficient for as far as damage goes. This one's another weird one. Swift Retribution. Again, Swift Retribution is the villain schemes deal 4 damage. Now, unless you're building your deck with tons of ways to confuse the villain, which is what we're doing in this strategy, this is a terrible card. I'm like, unless you're going to win the game and you have threat so far under control that, even if he schemes, you're not going to lose, and you need that extra 4 damage. Well, that is pretty cool. Again, the reason why I like the strategy is because you're doing stuff that Justice normally shouldn't do, which is deal damage. So I like the strategy just because of that. All right, another one here. It's a payoff if the villain is confused. So you can use your scare tactics, 1 for 3. Again, not optimal, but again, this is not aggression. So this is just, it's ways to deal damage in Justice, which I think is very, very interesting. And I think the most efficient in Justice here is Turn the Tide. After your hero thwarts and removes all threat from a scheme, deal 3 damage to an enemy. So 0 for 3 damage is pretty fun. So just, if you have no threat, or you have 1 threat on the main scheme, and then you thwart it, and then you can go 0 for 3, 2 for 5. So you've done 8 damage for removing that 1 threat and keeping that main down to 0. I think it's pretty cool. And if you have a 5-card hand, yeah, I think it fits. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think you even have an extra one. So if you have 2 Turn the Tides, well, there you go. It's 11 damage. So there's ways that you can play around that. And then my last card that I really enjoyed, this is one of the ones that got me going on this type of strategy, was the Followed card. So you put that on a side scheme, defeat this, you deal damage in Justice. So 4 damage. Again, 4 damage doesn't seem like a lot in a multiplayer game, but in a solo game, 4 damage is sometimes 1/4 of the villain's health. So it's like you're almost halfway there. You're a quarter of the way there. So for me, these cards that deal some significant amounts of damage are really, really, really fun. So these are like, I think the cards that you should definitely include multiple copies of these cards in the deck that you're going to be playing. All right, so these are the prime cards. All right, now let's look at other ways that we can make sure that, that we can deal damage and deal stuff like that in this aspect. All right, so another good one. It didn't go in in the top cards because it's very limited, but Brains over Brawn. Brains over Brawn, it's after your hero makes a basic thwart, deal damage to an enemy equal to your hero's thwart. So when you have, because it's limited to certain heroes, like I'm thinking of Wasp, who can get to 4, what's his name, Star-Lord, even Captain America. If you have those 2 plus the Thing, you can bring him up to 5. Jessica Jones, she can bring it up to like 5, 6. So that can be really interesting here. But again, after you make a basic thwart, you can pay and deal some damage, which is, even if it's 2 for 3, 2 for 4, it just gets better the bigger the higher your thwart is, which is kind of interesting. Concussive Blow is one of those interesting ones that it deals damage and it confuses, so you can actually pay off and combo off a couple cards off of that. So a Concussive Blow and then a Scare Tactics, so you get to do 6 damage and you get the confuse out of it, so you can actually flip down, or you can leave the confuse there and then you can use Swift Retribution next turn and make him confused and have him spend his confuse to just deal 4 damage to him. So there's kind of ways to play around that. The other big damage card is Stealth Strike, 4 damage to an enemy, and if you defeat that enemy, you remove 2 threat. So that's kind of interesting as well. It's again, it's not as efficient as the other ones. Most of the times you want to be targeting minions unless you're like the boss is like almost dead, and then you can actually defeat the villain and then make him go to the next stage, which would count to removing the last 2 threat, which is pretty good. Now, other ways that we have to control threat in Justice that I really enjoy with the strategy is Think Fast. But again, it's not in the top 5 because you have to be a Guardian to play this card. So I do enjoy it a lot, but it is ways to prevent, for 1 damage, giving him a confuse, and then you doing Swift Retribution, dealing 4 damage back. So there's all these fun ways that we can kind of do that. Aside from that, making an entrance. Now, so when your hero makes a basic thwart, it gets +2 for that thwart. And after that thwart ends, if you remove all the threat from a scheme, you get a payoff for what you want to be doing. So you get to heal 2 damage. You could turn the tide. Now, one thing that wouldn't work here is trying to play Brains over Brawn afterwards. So making an entrance, you only get it for that one instance. So it doesn't say like until the end of the round. Because if it says you get +2 until the end of the round, that'd be just broken. But with Brains over Brawn, it wouldn't be able to combo off together. So that's a little unfortunate. That would be a cool combo if it would actually be possible to make it work. Another great way for threat to be prevented to kind of help you in this strategy is Great Responsibility. Now, again, this is one of these weird cards that people, why would I ever play that? I can just remove the threat. But again, if you have one of those heroes that doesn't have a lot of a high thwart, or if you're exhausted, you happen to get exhausted, this is a great way to remove or to prevent threat from actually going on the main scheme. And then the other one is One Way or Another. Again, this is just card draw to do what you want to do. You get to find a side scheme, which you can pay off after with a followed, and have some fun with that. So those are some of these are the events for this strategy that you kind of want to complement depending on what hero you'll be playing. All right, so now let's look at some of the support cards and upgrades that we want to use. So obviously, Sonic Rifle. You can't go wrong with the Sonic Rifle when you want to be playing this strategy. Again, being able to have 2 confuses on a stick, again, and you can start paying off some of your other cards with them. Just keep it to when you need it. And then, oh, I got my Scare Tactics. Damn, 3 damage. Oh, I got Swift Retribution. Here you go. Get confused. Boom. Or, trigger it off on opposite turns, like on the villain's turn. So you confuse him, and then you stay in hero form, and then after that, you use your Scare Tactics, use your Swift Retribution, and then boom, confuse him again on the next turn, and then you can go and have some other fun with that. Just kind of playing off this, keeping the villain confused and just like, oh, what's going on? All right, Under Surveillance, definitely, I don't think you need the whole package of Under Surveillance, Counterintelligence, all this for this strategy. But the Under Surveillance, just if you're going to be using Swift Retribution and stuff like that, giving yourself a bit of an extra buffer can't hurt. And Justice Served. Justice Served is a great card for the strategy. Again, you'll be able to remove threat, and then, oh, I've removed all the threat. I get to ready, and then I get to do something else. So I get to either attack, or you can remove threat from something else. So there's all these things that you can do with Justice Served. I think it's a very, very efficient card for the strategy. I don't think this is a 3 of, but in the supports, adding a Beat Cop, again, just having one in the deck, and just like that, on occasion, that one threat that just, oh man, I'm one short, to be able to pull off like a making an entrance or something like that, so you can trigger off everything. So having one Beat Cop in your deck, I think is just good. Maybe even 2 if you think, but then it starts reserving a lot too much like permanent justice. So I think 1 in the deck is sufficient to what you want to be doing. Again, cards like Interrogation Room is optional depending if your hero has a lot of ways to deal damage. If there's a lot of minions in the deck, and like if you're playing Mutagen Formula, something like that. So this is our cards that can all help out on the side schemes and stuff like that. And one of my favorites is Vigilante Training. So go get one of these justice events, any event. So if you need another pivotal moment, there's no threat on the main. If you need to heal, go get your Making an Entrance, shuffle it back into your deck. I think this is a very cool card. And again, I love the art on this card. It is so cool. When I saw that, I was like, yeah, definitely Vigilante Justice is a thing. All right, and then let's look at some of the allies. Again, allies that can deal damage. We got Jack Flag. We got Daredevil. So these guys, they remove threat and they deal damage. So that's really cool. I love Venom and Wraith. Venom and Wraith, just because they have 3 attack. 3 attack characters in Justice, I think is super, super fun. Aside from that, we got Quake that just, you know what? If you're going to be putting down these minions, even if the minions scheme for 0, you can always do 2 damage. So she can kind of be like that permanent character. Oh, he schemes for 1. Perfect. He's got 2 life. I don't really need to attack him. I'll flip down. Let Quake take care of it. So there you go. So a couple of cards like that. Eros is always efficient because if you're playing it, like I said, a scenario with lots of minions, being able to confuse a couple of minions by playing with a Power of Justice, confusing 2 minions is amazing. And then lastly, our little friend Wiccan, who, if he doesn't be whiffing with like a 0 boost or a star boost, can actually deal 1, 2, 3, and sometimes even 4 damage So that can be very, very exciting. Like, oh yeah, Wicked, 4 damage. Dang! Especially if you can have some combos where you can actually look at the top card of the encounter deck and see exactly how many boost icons there are. So those, I think, are the main Justice cards that you want to be playing for this strategy. Again, this is Jack Flag here. He's a little... There you go. There you go, Jack Flag. Jack Flag, Daredevil, Venom, Wraith. There you go. So you can see them, Quake, and then Eros. There you go. So there you go. So that's it for the Justice cards. Now let's take a look at some of the basic cards that can really help out in this aspect. All right. One of the first ones we can talk about is Civic Duty. Again, sometimes it's if you want to be deck thinning your deck a little bit for certain characters, it makes a lot of sense. But just using just one of these and just giving you a +1 thwart until the end of the phase can make it just super efficient. So again, you can combo this if you have 3 of these and you have a couple of Brains over Brawn. All right, well, I'll bring my thwart up to 6 or 7, and then use Brains over Brawn and then deal 6-7 damage. Again, these are super janky combos, but they're still combos that can be pretty fun if you get to pull them off. The other ones here, I like this. I think I just like this card because it's a Gamora card, which is hit and run. Most people don't run this card. I kind of like it with Gamora because then you deal 3 damage, remove 3 threat. So I love it because of her ability. So it's 2 and 2, but with Gamora's precision and finesse, it's 3 and 3. But I would only run that in a Gamora deck, honestly. First Aid, because again, if you're running cards like allies like Venom or Daredevil that can deal some damage, you want to keep those allies alive. Meditation, I'm just gonna stop talking about meditation because it's just so good. I'm just like, yep, it's just so good. And then finally, Emergency. And Emergency is another one. Like, I really like Emergency with characters when I'm playing trying this kind of strategy with characters like Iron Man, where I can, and then what's her face, Captain Marvel, characters that actually need lightning resource. Even Thor, even though Thor is not the best for this strategy, just having lightning resources here in his kit just kind of fuels off those lightning strikes and stuff like that. So again, if this is a strategy you wanna explore, again, I've never said that this is the most optimal way to play Justice. This is just definitely more of a thematic thing. But yeah, definitely check it out. I'm going to be playing a few games so you guys can kind of see the strategy in action. I'll be playing with against a couple of minions, a couple of villains here, so you can see a little bit like how the strategy kind of wants to play out. Obviously, if you have access to these characters that can confuse, very, very efficient, because then you just have more options to really be playing into the strategy here. But again, if you have a hero that can control threat like a boss, then you shouldn't even be scared of trying this, because it's a fun way to play Justice, and it's out there. So again, I hope you guys like this video. I hope it will teach you or inspire you to try some of these different ways to play Justice. Again, try this for solo play, 2-player, 3-4 player, maybe wait for another strategy video where we're coming out with like multiplayer Justice. But yeah, this is definitely more for solo play than anything else. So guys, hope this strategy will help you beat the game. Ciao, ciao. See you on Friday for some gameplay.